a mountain with a dungeon appeared out of nowhere. He thought, why was there a dungeon in modern Japan? He added that it's similar to the dungeons in another world. As he entered the dungeon, he felt some sort of familiarity to it. He felt that he might have seen this dungeon before. 2 weeks ago, when he was on summer break, he fell into a hole that was on the ground. When he regained consciousness, he was already in a different world. The king was asking him to defeat the Demon King and save the world. He replied that he doesn't want to, and that he can't because he has an entrance exam next year, and he added that his school will resume within 2 weeks, so wanted to go back to his world. The princess interrupted, saying that they will return him back to his world. She further explained that world transit magic requires a lot of magic stones, so they might have to wait for a while. The guy asked, how long will it take? And the princess replied that they have used all their stockpiles to summon him, and that in 50 years they would have enough magic stones, as long as they don't get killed by the Demon King. The guy was shocked. He replied that he wanted to go home immediately. The princess answered that if he defeats the Demon King, he would be able to go home since the Demon King has a pretty large magic stone. Several months later, he is fighting inside a dungeon. He decided to defeat the Demon King, to be able to go back to his own world. But he was summoned here because of his potential as a warrior. He thought that if he didn't get stronger, then that means that he is not that different from a normal person. Few minutes later, he was healed by the princess. He said his thanks, and the princess replied that from now on, he needs to start acting like a warrior. She was worried that he was almost killed by a first-tier slime. He replied that he feels that he is getting stronger, but it's not like they can see their levels. So they need to fight cautiously. Then he asked if it was okay for a princess to come with him, alone inside the dungeon. The princess replied that he doesn't need to worry about her, because she is strong enough to defeat low-tiered monsters. The she added that she will act as support to help him recover quickly. That way, he will be able to fight with less breaks, and that would be much more efficient. He replied that it was a bit too grim, but the princess replied back, saying that she would support him until he learns how to heal himself. A year later, he just defeated a minotaur. He was excited that he defeated a low-tier dungeon boss. The princess sighed. She couldn't believe that it would take him a year just to complete the low-tier dungeon. He replied that since he learned magic now, he will be able to complete the next dungeons faster. He then asked why is she still following him. He added that he is able to use healing magic now. The princess replied back saying that he can't use magic if he runs out of mana. He was about to reply, but he was cut off by the princess. She said that she will accompany him until he is able to make potions, since depending on healing magic is dangerous. Then he said his thanks, while thinking that the princess was a tsundere type. 6 months later, he completed the next dungeon, and he is now able to make potions. The princess said that he was naive. She then asked him how many dungeons does he think exists. He replied by asking, do they really have to complete all the dungeon? Then he added that, isn't the Demon King their main priority to defeat? The princess replied that the Demon King is incomparable to the dungeon bosses. He won't be able to defeat him unless he can complete dungeons easily. Then, the princess said that it would be troublesome if Ryuji dies, so she wants him to train harder. Apparently, the guy's name is Ryuji. Ryuji said that he thinks it is unnecessary for her to accompany him in the dungeons from now on. The princess replied back, saying that if he runs out of mana inside the dungeon, it would all be over. She added that normal potions don't recover mana, so she will accompany him until he can make mana potions. 5 years later, they are fighting a dragon dungeon boss. The dragon was lunging towards the princess. The princess thought she was about to die, but Ryuji was able to cut off the dragon's neck in time. As they were walking back to the village, he said that they might be able to fight the Demon King in 2 years, since they're halfway through all the dungeons. But the princess was downhearted because she almost dragged him down. Ryuji answered honestly, saying that with his current abilities, it would be hard to protect her and fight against monsters at the same time. And since he can make mana potions now, he wants her to wait for him in the castle. The princess angrily slapped him with her backhand multiple times, then asked for a treat. Ryuji then said that he was glad that Daenerys was on her side and said his thanks. The princess's name was Daenerys. Daenerys then said that the people of their world cannot defeat the Demon King, but if it's him, then he might be able to win. 10 years have passed. He almost died many times, but finally, he defeated the Demon King. Back in the castle, the king is thanking Ryuji for defeating the Demon King. The king thanked him on behalf of all the inhabitants of their world, but the king asked him if he is sure that he wanted to go back to his own world. He proposed to Ryuji that he wanted him to marry Daenerys and take after his throne. But Ryuji said that he wanted to return to his world because he wanted to see his family again. This revelation shocked Daenerys. Daenerys was unable to stop her tears from falling. But despite being heartbroken, she still casted the spell for Ryuji to return to his world. Seeing the spell in action amazed Ryuji. Ryuji says his goodbye to Daenerys, but Daenerys, still crying, shouted to Ryuji that he should just shut up and go home already. Ryuji fell down, returning him to his world, where he was greeted by his childhood friend. She was Mitsuhashi Kayoko. They have been in the same class since they were kids. Ryuji said that she's been the same as always, then asked why was she still in middle school. This confused Kayoko. Ryuji thought that didn't 10 years have already passed. He asked to borrow Kayoko's mirror, and he saw himself that he was returned to his age back when he was first transported. Even though Daenerys was sad that Ryuji didn't choose to stay in their world, Ryuji went back to his home after 10 years. He was unknowingly staring at his mother, which made her mother ask, "What's the problem?" Ryuji just made up an excuse, that it felt like he was in a different world yesterday. Her mother was amused, saying that he might have had a bad dream. Then her mother told Ryuji that they will be going shopping, so he needs to take care of the house while they're gone. Ryuji told them to have a safe trip. A few minutes later, Ryuji decided to go into a convenience store to buy some food and drinks. He was glad that he was able to return home. After buying everything, he went back, but Kayoko was looking for him, saying that his parents are in trouble. His parents were driving, then suddenly a truck crashed into them. Unfortunately, both of his parents passed away. Disheartened by his parents' death, he thought that there might be something wrong, that the moment he came back to his world, his parents immediately got into an accident and died. He thought for all the possibilities. Is this a curse from the Demon King? Or the price for subjugating him? Few hours later, Kayoko helped Ryuji after the funeral. Ryuji thought that he might have defeated the Demon King and came back to his world, but suddenly, a loud shout can be heard outside the door, shouting that they were Ryuji's acquaintances and that from here on out, it's their family and their relationship. A group of people entered, and the man started asking how much he got from his parents' insurance. It was his uncle. Then her aunt said that all the money from the insurance and the inheritance should go to them. And that was because Ryuji was still a child, and the law dictates that he won't be able to get anything. Then her aunt threatened him that they will call the police or worse, send him to the juvenile center. Kayoko fled the scene by saying she will go home, while Ryuji's uncle and cousin rummaged around for things they can take. Ryuji's other cousins pressed him to give the money and asked for the land and home certification, and her aunt asked where the jewelry was placed. Ryuji thought, what are his relatives? No. What are these people thinking? Immediately disrespecting his parents' death, this angered Ryuji. He said that he can't give the money and his parents' belongings to them. His uncle's family pressed him further, saying that he was the head of the Tanahashi family and that it is obvious that the branch household should contribute to the main household. Ryuji shrugged the off by saying that kind of excuse won't work on him, and that they're old yet they act like a bunch of idiots. This made his uncle angry even more, so he asked his sons to teach Ryuji a lesson. The three idiots ganged up on Ryuji, and his uncle said that they should avoid the face and hit Ryuji someplace where it wouldn't show. The three idiots all punched at the same time, but to their surprise, they didn't hit Ryuji. They looked around and they saw Ryuji standing in front of the door. Ryuji thought that his cousins are slower than second-tier goblins, probably slower than first-tier slimes. His 3 idiot cousins ganged on him up again, saying that he shouldn't dodge the punch and stay still. Ryuji thought that, don't they feel pathetic saying those words? They tried to punch him again, and they hit the door. Ryuji's uncle and aunt asked if they're all right. Ryuji answered yes, but he was immediately cut off by his uncle and aunt. Worried, his aunt and uncle hurried to their sons and asked if they're okay. While they were attending to each other, Ryuji casted hypnosis to them. He told them that they won't be able to speak or move on their own, and that they would answer his questions truthfully. Ryuji asked if they're constantly extorting property by deceiving and threatening others. His uncle, with a smug look on his face, replied, that they do, and that was because he was smart. Ryuji didn't expect that. Hypnosis was a skill that wasn't useful against the Demon King. He thought that the people in this world have a very low magic resistance, so it was effective. He thought that for now, hypnosis should be used to extract information from other people. Her aunt handed him a bunch of condolence letters. Ryuji thanked them and told them that he will take the half of each. Then they bid farewell and thanked Ryuji for teaching their sons who have no common sense. Ryuji told them that he will send them the half of the condolence gift so they don't need to visit him. Ryuji hypnotized them to take all their money from their bank accounts and also borrow money from consumer finance. After that, they put all the money in the condolence letters. There wasn't much money, but he hoped that they will learn their lesson and stop extorting others. Ryuji was left alone. He sat in front of his parents' ashes. He thought that if he was in the car with them, then his parents wouldn't have died, and his uncle and aunt wouldn't have come. He questioned whether he did the right thing or not. After some time being alone, he felt the sadness creeping in, and for the first time he cried in front of his parents' ashes. A few weeks later, Ryuji and Kayoko was walking their way to the school. Kayoko asked him if he saw the news. Ryuji said that they had a good harvest this season. Kayoko corrected him that it wasn't that. She said that the news said that dungeons have appeared all around the world. Ryuji answered with an uninterested face. Kayoko then further explained that dungeons that are similar from the games have appeared. She added that there are monsters appearing inside the dungeons, and all the militaries around the world started researching it, but they didn't learn anything. And that in Japan, opposition parties are making a fuss over the JSDF's dispatch was a violation against the Constitution. She then said that with the appearance of dungeons, all the resources have dried up. The experts said that if this continues, they won't be able to maintain their civilization and that they might end up going back into primitive days. Ryuji was worried because he won't be able to watch anime. Kayoko said that the government called for an emergency resource meeting, but the opposition parties are protesting and causing trouble. Ryuji asked why, and Kayoko answered that she doesn't know. She said that they're probably just against the idea, and there might still be time until it's necessary to hold one. Kayoko added that the appearance of the dungeon and the loss of resources seems to be related since the timing was too perfect. Ryuji told her that he will try to look onto it too, and Kayoko said that even the internet is in chaos. Unbeknownst to Kayoko, Ryuji didn't have any intention in looking it up online. After the night has fallen, Ryuji sneaked towards the dungeon. He thought they seemed to be on high alert, but it is easy for him to sneak around because of his transparency spell. He thought, why would dungeons suddenly appear in their world? And as he walked inside, he thought that the entrance seemed familiar. As he walked down the stairs, he realized that the dungeon that he was in was the dungeon from the other world. He thought that, did the dungeons got transported alongside him? If that were the case, then he already has the experience. The first level was slime, and the second level was goblins. As he traveled further inside, he thought that it might really be the same dungeon that he conquered back in the other world. He traveled even further, and it only proved that it was the same dungeon from the other world. You hunt monsters the same way, and the monsters drop magic stones after being hunted. He thought that if they keep hunting monsters inside the dungeon then, they might have a solution for the lack of resources. He thought that the fact the military of each country failed proved that weapons of this world are ineffective against the dungeon monsters. then the only possible way was the same as the other world. In the other world, resources were only available inside the dungeon, and there are people who hunted the monsters and brought back the items that they obtained. They were called adventurers. Ryuji hoped that there would be people that takes the mantle of being an adventurer. Because he had the characteristics of being an adventurer, so he thought others will have the same potential. He casted the spell Escape, and suddenly he was teleported near the dungeon's entrance. His stomach grumbled loudly, which made him think that he should grab something to eat on his way home. He noticed something different in his hand. And it was the words, Level 1. Ryuji saw the words, Level 1 on the palm of his hand. He thought that it wasn't there before he entered the dungeon. He casted a spell to disable it, but it has no effect. The guards overheard him casting the spell, so they tried to investigate where the sound was. This prompted Ryuji to cast his transparency spell again to hide from the guards. When the guards reached the area where Ryuji was, they didn't see anything, so they thought it was just their imagination. Ryuji thought that the transparency was really convenient. He then overheard the guards saying that, this cave's sudden appearance and the resources rapidly dying, they wonder what might happen to their country's future. After eavesdropping in their conversation, Ryuji decided to teleport back to his home, but he forgot to do something. He forgot to drop by at the convenience store to buy a bento. But he is too lazy to go out now, so he just laid on his bed, drooling his hunger away. Then the doorbell rang. It was Kayoko. She brought some food over Ryuji's house. Kayoko prepared the food she brought over as appetizing as possible, and Ryuji said that it looks delicious. As they sat together to eat, Ryuji couldn't hold back his hunger and shouted, "Itadakimasu!" Ryuji started gobbling up the food, while Kayoko told him to eat slow. Ryuji praised her mom's cooking. Kayoko asked how's the salad and added that she made it. Ryuji said that it was decent, and the mayonnaise that was used was just store-bought. Kayoko replied back that, what kind of review was that even though it was true? After that they said their thanks for the meal. Kayoko thought that since it has been a while, why don't they play a game together, but Ryuji told her that he is busy. Kayoko asked what he was busy about, and Ryuji showed her his palm. Kayoko looked at confusion. It seems like she can't see what was in Ryuji's palm. Ryuji asked if he can see Kayoko's palm, and he saw that there was nothing written on it. Kayoko blushed as Ryuji touched her hand, so she pulled her hand away and asked, what was that for? Moments later, they said their goodbyes. Ryuji thought that the level on his palm was probably related to the dungeon. He thought that, does this level equate to the adventurer's level? If it was, then it was weird because he beat the Demon King with the level that he has. He went to bed thinking that there's too little information to even try to understand. Then he thought that he might try going to an upper-level dungeon. But for now, he should just sleep, since he was tired from exploring the dungeon. Later that night, a group of military personnel entered the dungeon. Their captain shouted to not let their guard down, and added that they won't be able to have electricity or gunpowder if it wasn't for the dungeon. One of his men thought that, isn't their captain a bit too scared? That with so many people, they would definitely be fine. A drop of water fell onto his helmet as he looked up. A huge slime suddenly falls onto him and immediately started drowning him. They surrounded the slime and started to attack it. One of them got attacked, but he was able to dodge it. As the slime started to slow down, the captain told them to destroy the core. After hitting the core with a crossbow bolt, the slime started to lose its form, releasing the guy that was inside it. The captain reminded them to collect all the loot that was dropped by the slime and to watch their surroundings. The captain then asked who was attacked. The guy replied that it was Sato, and that he was crushed by the slime which caused his death. The captain prayed for him, while one of his men asked if they should continue. The captain thought that they have 17 magic stones in total, and there are 12 SDF and 10 firemen. So, he made a sound decision to fall back and retreat. Few minutes later in the captain's quarters, the captain asked him if he was the one who said that a level appeared on his hand. He showed it to the captain, but there wasn't anything. The captain removed him from the case and told him to take some counseling, take his salary, and get some rest. But before he left, the captain asked him what was the number written on his palm. The guy said that it was level 2. The captain muttered to himself that he must be a level 3 fighter. The next day, Kayoko approached Ryuji so they can walk together to school. Kayoko remembered that. Ryuji asked her about the number on the palm of their hands. Kayoko said that it shows to the people who went inside the dungeon even once. It was adventurer level and job class. They continued their conversation, and Kayoko said that America has the highest number of people that has number on their palms. It is said that they have more than 20 people. Kayoko then added that in Japan, they only have 2 police officers, 5 special defense forces, and 1 firefighter. There's several more people that claims they have a level, but the government can't fully confirm it. It was just as Ryuji thought. The number on his palm was really an adventurer level. But why was it at level 1? He thought it may have been a bug, since there was no job class on it either. Kayoko then said that she also looked at her palm, since it would have been nice to have an adventurer level. She added that many people look up to adventurers because they can earn money, and moreover, they sound pretty cool. But Ryuji answered unenthusiastically. As Ryuji entered his classroom, he wondered why was everyone so noisy today. It seems that one of his classmates, Yokohama, had the characteristics of being an adventurer. So the other students were gathering, asking things about being an adventurer. The other student said that he also wants to confirm whether he has the characteristics of being an adventurer, but there was a new law that prohibits entry until they graduate middle school. The bell rang, and their class started. The teacher said that Yokohama should go to the principal's office because there was someone from the Metropolitan Police Department looking for him. His other classmates looked at him with envy. The teacher proceeded to start the class, but Ryuji interrupted, saying that he needs to go to the bathroom. Then he added that it was going to be a big one, so it might take a while. Seated of a bathroom stall, he casted Vision, which is a spell that allows him to view certain areas at a distance. He saw Yokohama being interviewed in the principal's office. The guy from the police department said that there are many people getting the characteristics of an adventurer, and he added that the existence of those people is invaluable. Then, he asked Yokohama, what is his level and job class? Yokohama answered that he was a level 6 thief. The police officer said that if that was true, then he is close to the level of someone in America who is level 8 and is currently holding the highest level that they know. Then, the police officer asked if Yokohama recognized the device he is holding since he was level 6. Yokohama answered what was it, indicating that he doesn't know about it. The officer explained that it is a scouter. It was a rare item found in the dungeon. He continued to explain that usually people can only see their own level on their palm, but if you use the scouter, you will be able to see other people's level. He then asked Yokohama to show his palm, but Yokohama suddenly exclaimed that he is sorry. He lied about having the characteristics of an adventurer, and that he hasn't gone inside any dungeon. He was only pretending to have it because everyone started to compliment him. The officer left, saying that it was too bad. Then he said that after graduating, if he gets the characteristics of an adventurer, he should contact him. Ryuji was surprised. He thought he could make some friends because you can only see your own level. He never thought that there was a way to verify the claims. Back in the dungeon, there was a bunch of people forming a line on the dungeon management office. The office prohibits entry of the people that doesn't have the characteristics of an adventurer because it would be dangerous for them. The guy asked his companion named Kunimi, what should they do? Kunimi replied back to his boss, saying that he shouldn't worry. Since he has all the papers necessary to enter the dungeon, the office personnel confirmed and let them through. Kunimi's boss was amazed at him. He then proudly said that a lawyer uploaded a video of how to get into the dungeon, so he prepared everything that was necessary for them to enter. They both looked at the palm of their hands, but to their disappointment, they didn't have the characteristics of being an adventurer. Kunimi tried to be optimistic, so said to his boss that they shouldn't be discouraged and do their best. He said that even if they don't have the characteristics, they can still beat the first level of the dungeon. His boss was worried if it was really okay for them to continue. Kunimi replied that he watched someone's video and he has learned so much about it. His boss said that it was amazing that someone has made a video about the dungeon. Kunimi replied that it is more like a memo or a story, since cameras can't be used inside the dungeon. Few minutes later, Kunimi was troubled. He is looking at the map, but it seems like the map and the dungeon layout wasn't matching up. His boss asked what was the problem, and he replied back that it was nothing. He figured that he can't let his boss worry about these things. He thought that it may have been a small mistake from the uploader of the video. They shined their flashlights around and they saw a huge slime. They ran away and tried to lure it into a dead end, but they were cornered by another slime. Kunimi shouted that it was different from what the video said, because in the video, they said that there wouldn't be any slime in that place. In an apartment somewhere, there's a guy looking at his channel, saying that his video's views are skyrocketing. Then a girl asked him, "Was it the fake video of the dungeon that he made yesterday?" He replied that it is, then he proudly said that the video is getting a bunch of views. The girl said that the people watched it must have been stupid, and the guy replied that most of the people who watch it was fired office workers or those that came from a bankrupt company. These two are just feeding from the misfortune of other people with no regards whatsoever. Back in the dungeon, Kunimi and his boss are still having trouble with the slime. Kunimi then shouted that he will distract them, so his boss could run away. He then smashed the slime using a baseball bat, but the bat just melted. He threw it away to get a new weapon, then suddenly...
The slime suddenly grabbed him. His boss shouted that he wouldn't be able to face his family if he becomes the type of person that abandons their subordinates, and above all, he doesn't want Kunimi to die. Kunimi shouted, worrying for his boss's life then. His memory flashed into his mind. It's been 3 years since he met his boss. He was wandering from place to place after getting released from the juvenile center. The people treated him badly, since he has a record of coming from the juvenile center. They were acting as if he had stolen money from the cash register. But then that's where he met his boss. At first, he thought he was just another one of those people acting as if they were good guys. He remembered when he was delivering some products, his old acquaintances were pestering him, asking him about taking the products inside the truck and selling it for themselves. But he stood his ground and said that he was rehabilitated, and he said that he doesn't want to do those stuff anymore. They beat him up until he can't move. Then the other guys asked what should they do about the truck. Kunimi shouted, begging for them not to touch the truck. But even after begging, they burned the truck. He thought, his life is over. He thought he will get fired again from work or worse. His boss entered the room asking if he was okay. With a resolute face, Kunimi apologized for what happened to the truck and product. But his boss told him that it was okay. They have insurance and funds that are set aside just in case situation like these happens. He said that next time he shouldn't put out the fire by himself again. His boss added that they can buy a new truck, but they can't replace him, so he should take good care of himself. At that moment, he thought that his boss was definitely a good person. Back in the dungeon, Kunimi started to regret getting his boss in danger. He regretted believing the fake video that he watched. He started to pray. He prayed to God that if he really does exist, he begged to save his boss's life. Suddenly, the slime bubble burst open. Their cores were cut in half, releasing both of them the slime's grasp. It was Ryuji wearing a face mask. He arrived just in the nick of time. Kunimi asked if his boss will be okay. Ryuji replied that he shouldn't worry and that they will both be okay. After Ryuji finished treating their injuries, Kunimi thanked him, saying that they would have died if he hasn't arrived. Ryuji replied that he was just passing through. Kunimi asked for his name, but Ryuji said that he wants to stay anonymous. Then Ryuji gave them some advice in the dungeon. He said that the place they were was the spawning point of the slimes, and that if they planned to hunt them, then they should lure them one by one 30 meters away from there. He then said that it's better to keep each other close if they plan of hunting together. After that, he said his goodbyes. Kunimi was left wondering with his boss. He thought that there are people who get killed, even when they're in the police department. And yet, he just knocked the slimes in one strike. He wondered who that guy really was.
A scouter. It is a rare drop from monsters. It's said that it displays the adventurer's levels and jobs. Some were discovered by adventurers, and some of them were bought by the government. Ryoji wore the scouter to see his own stats, but he thought that it's ridiculous, because it only displays that his combat power is 3, but at least he thought it looks cool. Moments later, Kayoko dropped by at Ryoji's house, and she saw him wearing a scouter. This alarmed Ryoji. But, thankfully, Kayoko was oblivious and thought that it's just for cosplay. She said that she wanted to buy one too. As she raised her hand, her level and job class showed up on her palm. Ryoji saw that Kayoko had level 1 warrior written on her palm. He is surprised that he can see the adventurer level and class outside the dungeon. He thought that if Kayoko finds out that she has adventurer traits, she would definitely want to become an adventurer. And if a beginner like her starts to dungeon delve without a guide, then she might put herself in danger. Ryoji shrugged it off and returned to the topic, saying that he won the scouter in a lottery and it was a super rare item, all while thinking that he shouldn't overthink this stuff for now, and that in the first place, his stats doesn't show his true stats correctly. Kayoko asked if they could study together, and Ryoji agreed. Kayoko was surprised at the improvement of Ryoji's grades, so she asked him what did he do. Ryoji replied that he just read the textbooks and studied, but Kayoko didn't believe him, and she said that he might be suspected by cheating. So Ryoji just told her the truth. He said that his intelligence went up from training in another world. Kayoko asked which other world is it, saying that she also wanted to go there. Ryoji realized that she didn't understand what he said, and that she thought that it was just cram school. All the talk about the other world made Ryoji remember about the past, so he tried to explain it to Kayoko. He reminisced his time in the otherworld dungeon delving with Princess Dinaris. He remembered fighting a copper turtle. He thought that magic works on the monsters that has high physical resistance. Dinaris reminded him that he needed to destroy its core so it doesn't regenerate. Ryoji asked where it was located, and she replied that it's inside the shell. Ryoji started pummeling the shell, while Dinaris shouted that he should hurry up or the monster will regenerate. Dinaris remembered that this isn't a monster, a beginner should solo, so she offered to help him. Embarrassed, Ryoji declined the offer even though he is having a hard time. The turtle regenerated and threw him off its back, so Ryoji casted thunder magic, killing it again. Dinaris thought that it might take a while, so she decided to have some tea while waiting for Ryoji to destroy the core. Few minutes later, Ryoji finally destroyed the core, which immediately leveled him up. Dinaris noticed him leveling up, so she told him he could use a break. Ryoji, questioning Dinaris' choice of setting up a tea party set inside the dungeon, but she replied as if it was the most normal thing to do, saying that she brought the tea party set by using the skill item box. Dinaris told him that he will keep the loot from the turtle in her item box for him. Ryoji muttered that he wanted that skill too, since it's convenient. After a while, Ryoji asked Dinaris that in this world there is no status display, but the concept of level exists? She replied yes, hinting that what he felt after destroying the core earlier was the feeling of leveling up, and Ryoji said that she should have told him sooner. He added that if had known about it, then he could have counted how many times he had leveled up. Dinaris said that it is okay because she remembers it, which surprised Ryoji. Dinaris explained that when leveling up, various stats increase, and once his intelligence gets to a certain point, he can recall anything that he experienced because it is stored in his memory. Ryoji asked her, "Does that mean defeating monsters makes them smarter?" And she replied that it does. He thought that if he defeats the Demon King, he might become a genius when he returns home. Dinaris asked Ryoji what he think about the cookie she baked, but the both of them were surprised. The copper turtle respawned already and immediately charged at them while they were taking a break. Ryoji charged at the turtle, while Daenerys casted the spell Thunder. The spell stunned the turtle, giving Ryoji enough time to flank and cutting the turtle in half. The increased stat surprised him. He put some force behind his swing, thinking that the turtle was hard, but instead he sliced it in half. He looked at Daenerys, but she is just devastated, losing her baked sweets. Back in the castle, Ryoji is testing his increased intelligence. He tried to recall everything he had done prior to this moment. He counted that he had leveled up 72 times, and his level is 735. He got excited because he might be able to memorize all the lines from his favorite anime. By the time he defeated the Demon King, he had already exceeded level 1400. So, when he took the exam after returning to his world, he could easily solve the problem just by skimming in the textbook even once, thinking that all the hard work he did in the other world finally paid off. The teacher finished checking their papers, announcing that the top scorer was Ryoji. He was glad about the result, but the teacher said that he wanted to discuss something about his future, so he wanted to talk to him in the faculty. His classmates gathered around him after the class ended, but he dodged everyone by saying that he was called by the teacher. At the faculty room, he was getting a ton of attention by being the top student, and the other teachers are gossiping about him. He thought that standing out is troublesome, so he figured that he should only aim for the average score for now, because the attention would make it difficult for him to do dungeon delving, and the reason he risked his life to defeat the Demon King was not to live a constrained life. After explaining it to Kyoko, she still didn't believe him, and replied that should she tell about the story, that she was reincarnated as a villain's daughter. So Ryoji just gave up on making her believe him and continued studying, while Kyoko continued to make fun of him while they studied. They took a break a few hours later and ate some sweets. Halfway their conversation, Kyoko remembered that she wanted to go to a level assessment after graduating, so she asked Ryoji if he wanted to go with her. Kyoko explained that there will be a new school that specifically takes in people with adventurer characteristics. So, the Ministry of Education is using the Scouter to see if the students have the adventurer characteristics. Kyoko invited Ryoji because she was curious about his abilities and because he said he came from another world. But Ryoji replied that he doesn't want to. He said that he wasn't really interested. Kyoko replied that she knows he is curious, but Ryoji replied that going to the level assessment was annoying. Kyoko used her trump card, the puppy eyes, that she doesn't want to go alone. Ryoji thought that it won't work on him because he saw this ever since they were kids. Kyoko asked if they could go together. Ryoji agreed. He immediately lost to Kyoko's puppy eyes. A few hours later, Kyoko went home. Ryoji remembered about the time he had in the other world. He remembered asking Daenerys that wouldn't it be convenient if there was a level assessment. Daenerys replied that it was an interesting opinion, but it might cause some problems. She explained that there are no nobles that has the characteristics of an adventurer in this region, and there are some high-level adventurers that lie about their true level. If there was a level assessment, then they wouldn't be able to lie about their level. So, it might cause more fights between them and the nobles. Ryoji asked why would people lie about their level. Daenerys replied that people tend to look down on people who are lower than them. She added that even Ryoji might look down on her if he reaches a high level, but Ryoji disagreed. Daenerys said that he is only saying it for now. Ryoji replied that they used 50 years of national energy to summon him. He added that he knows it wasn't easy to summon someone suddenly, even if the reason was saving the world. And with the added pressure of not being allowed to fail, it was amazing that Daenerys was able to use a complex summoning magic. Ryoji was grateful to her, so even if he becomes a level 100 or level 1000, he will never look down on her. Daenerys teared up after hearing what he said. She covered her face to avoid embarrassment. Ryoji was dumbfounded. He said sorry if he said something wrong, but Daenerys just shut him up. Ryoji thought that in this world, the concept of level and job class is new, so there might be some discrimination. He thought it might be tough for low-level adventurer. He is a level 1400 warrior, so might be fine, but as he looked at his hand, something crossed his mind. At the office of the Prime Minister Gol, they were discussing about the other countries rushing to find information about the dungeon. Because there was shortage on the resources, they would have to collect resources in the dungeon. So they prioritized sending adventurers in the dungeon. Fortunately, their country has the largest number of dungeons, and the people that have the characteristics make up 2% of their population compared to the average of other countries, 0.55%. But it means nothing if people are not willing to be an adventurer, so they raised the price for the resources from dungeon. One guy said that they need to discover a lot of talented people, and the lady added that they developed a law that allows students who graduated from middle school to enter the dungeon. And they also made it possible for 9th graders to take level assessment before graduation. All that was left was the approval of Adventurers School. In the level assessment area, there was a long line forming which surprised Ryoji and Kyoko. Kyoko said that there were students from their school too. Ryoji replied that it's because they can make a lot of money. They can make more money than being an office worker just by taking down floor 1's slimes. Someone shouted, making a commotion, saying that they should check his level again. The person causing trouble asked for the scouter so that he can check it himself, but the personnel replied that he can't because it is a valuable item and it costs a lot, which made the guy walk out. Ryoji said that he guessed the guy had no adventurer characteristics, and Kyoko replied that even if that was the case, he was going overboard and causing trouble. After a few hours, it was their turn to take the assessment. Kyoko's result was a level 1 warrior. The others looked at her with amazement. The examiner recommended that she should go to the adventurer school. After that, the examiner called for Ryoji. He showed his palm to the examiner, but the examiner was troubled. So the examiner decided to say that he doesn't have the level display. Ryoji pleaded to look at it again, but Kyoko stopped him, saying that it was embarrassing. The female examiner said that Ryoji has a level display on his hand, but the male examiner said that she didn't have to say it. He added that Ryoji doesn't have a job class, so it was for the best that he doesn't become an adventurer. Ryoji asked, "What does it mean?" The examiner, annoyed, he explained that when adventurer goes inside the dungeon, they form a team, because if they fight alone, they will die in the first floor. The balance between jobs is very important. The unique skill from the job, certain magic, and status points that can only be received from having a certain job. And without a job, he wouldn't be able to contribute to the team, and he will end up being a burden. Ryoji said that he has a job, but it just happened to not show up. Then he said that he feels he can go inside the dungeon alone. But this angered the examiner, causing the examiner to lash out to Ryoji. He said that what can a child who hasn't gone inside a dungeon do? He added that even though he looks like a normal worker, he is a level 6 magician who has gone down to floor 5, and he shouted at Ryoji that a kid like him just doesn't know how dangerous the dungeons are. The loud commotion was attracting attention, so Kyoko said that Ryoji is being naggy. After apologizing, both Kyoko and Ryoji left, leaving the examiner confused. He was wondering how did Ryoji know about the Mad Bee, and that the information about the 5th floor is restricted. While Kyoko and Ryoji walked back home, she said that it was rare for him to get tense in that type of situation, so Ryoji apologized for his behavior earlier. She then said that they should go into the adventurer's school together, since they both have the characteristics of being the adventurer, and Ryoji agreed. Then suddenly, a classmate of Kyoko approached them. She called him Ito. He said that he has level 1 hunter, and Kyoko replied that it's amazing. Ryuji looked at the both of them, smiling. Then, Ito said that there was an explanation session about the jobs and asked if Kyoko wanted to go with him, but Kyoko is walking home with Ryoji, which troubled her. He said that it's going to be worth attending, and Kyoko agreed. She said goodbye to Ryoji and went with Ito to attend the explanation session. Somewhere in the United Kingdom, a blonde girl is getting ready to do a dungeon delving with her team. She reminded them that dungeons are dangerous, so they should be careful. That girl's name was Isabella Renee Clooney. She is a level 9 holy knight. As they head down into the dungeon, she looked at her palm and thought. Most of the frontline classes are warriors and fighters. She hasn't heard of any other holy knights beside herself. In video games and such, holy knights are usually an advanced class. She noticed that so far, the only difference between her and the other frontline classes is that her stats grow faster than them. At the first floor, they met a group of slimes. One of them said that the slimes look more adorable lately. But it's probably because of their level difference. Isabella gave the orders to her party members to fight the slime. The vanguards tanked the attacks thrown by the slime, while the healer supports them and the mage deal damage using offensive magic. But a slime suddenly appeared from behind them. Thankfully, Isabella noticed it, so she was able to react. She sliced the slime's core in half, instantly defeating it. They thanked Isabella for helping them. And Isabella said that the monsters will probably respawn themselves over time. Considering the amount of experience and the loot they drop, it is really handy that they appear endlessly. The healer said that the respawning of monsters feels like a game, while the other guy pointed out the job class, levels, and skills. Isabella agreed and said that even though it feels like a game, they can still get hurt, so they should take good care of themselves. She then told them that they will proceed to the second floor. The healer said that she doesn't want any goblins to appear. The magician replied back saying they always go for female adventurers. Suddenly, a goblin grabbed the magician from behind, but she managed to free herself by hitting it with her elbow. She immediately casted Fireball while shouting at the perverted goblin, and the fireball instantly burnt the goblin to crisps. Isabella praised the magician by saying that she did a good job defeating it, even if it was just a single goblin. She added that her efforts in leveling are paying off. She offered to give some of her mana potions to the magician so she can continue to cast more spells. And the magician appreciated Isabella's offers because mana potions were expensive. The healer interrupted, saying, compared to the goblins in the game, the goblins in the dungeon are as tall as humans and really perverted, so she doesn't want to go near them. So, Isabella offered to be the rear guard while they traverse on the second floor. Few minutes later, a horde of goblins appeared in front of them. But Isabella, being a level 9 holy knight, she managed to defeat them with ease. Another group of goblins arrived from behind, completely surrounding them. But Isabella also managed to defeat those goblins. The group felt that they were being useless, because instead of them protecting Isabella, they were the ones that ended up needing her protection. The healer bragged that she is the only person that is useful because of her healing magic. This made the vanguard jealous, so they both charged in to attack to prove their worth. After the battle, the healer wanted to show off her healing skills, but to her surprise, Isabella casted a healing spell. She managed to learn a healing spell after leveling up to level 10. So the healer just laughed off the feeling of being useless, and the magician chimed in saying, "Don't worry about it." Few hours later, they went back up, finishing their dungeon exploration. Isabella said to them that they did a great job and showed them the loot they gathered from the dungeon exploration. She added that this loot can be sold for £100,000 at the official government purchase price. It was a shame that they didn't get scanners, which are over million. She also said after selling, they'll be paid in equal parts. Everyone was excited and thankful at Isabella, but two men suddenly talked to them. It was the Duke Grosvenor and Viscount Wyatt. The Duke said that they have permission from the Duchess to own the dungeon. The Viscount said that the team is vulgar and that it affects their family's dignity. So Isabella asked what she should do. The Duke asked for 50% of the profits from selling the loot, and he said that he won't take anything lower than 50%. This surprised them, but Isabella didn't falter from the Duke's intimidation. She said that she will give her share, which is 20%, because she can't reduce the rewards of the team that risked their lives dungeon delving. She added that there are 100,000 dead and missing in the dungeon, and that the dungeon is too dangerous for a single person to handle. The Duke said that the dungeon is too profitable to be handed down to the government, and he added that the danger should be handled by adventurers and they should focus on leveling up and managing the dungeon. While the Viscount continued to look perversely at Isabella. Isabella said that the problem isn't about leveling up. She said that if you had the level to conquer the deepest part of the dungeon, then it would be different. The Duke replied that so far, the lowest floor explored is 8th floor, and that there would be no one foolish enough to enter the dungeon alone, so she shouldn't mention something unlikely. The Duke thought that Isabella's intelligence increased since she's at level 9. He thought that her predictions might have been correct. So he came into a conclusion to make a management company to monopolize government jobs. The Duke turned his back, saying that for now he will let it be, and asked for £50,000 even if it's paid in parts. Then he walked away, ignoring the idiot Viscount. Isabella and her team watched them leave. She thought that as long as they're in the United Kingdom, she will be imprisoned by the rules set up by the Duke. Meanwhile, in Japan, Ryoji can't stop himself from sneezing. He thought that he might have had some cold since he hasn't leveled up. He casted a healing spell to himself just to make sure. Then he suited up to get ready for dungeon delving. He casted invisibility and teleport to instantly go in the dungeon. Then he stealthily traversed the dungeon, heading into the deepest part, and he thought that this dungeon is definitely the Demon King's dungeon. And it is the deepest and most dangerous dungeon in the Otherworld. The lowest level in the Otherworld was level 1000, and in the Otherworld, there was a Demon King. He thought, what could be his enemy in his world? It was a towering jet black dragon. Ryoji called it Ebony Dragon Demon King. He thought it was huge. Then he asked himself which one would be stronger, his sword or the ebony dragon. They both charged at each other. Ryoji managed to dodge, and he was surprised by the speed of the dragon. He manages to cut the ebony dragon, thinking that it was a good decision to switch to the sword that defeated the Demon King. The dragon's tail fell off, and the ebony dragon just noticed that its tail was cut off. This made the ebony dragon angry. So it charged at Ryoji, but he couldn't keep its own balance, so it crashed on the floor. The dragon casted a few fireballs towards Ryoji, but he managed to cast Ice Arrow in retaliation. Ryoji thought that this ebony dragon is stronger than the Demon King in terms of firepower. While Ryoji was lost in his thoughts, the dragon casted fireballs that sneaked up behind Ryoji. The fireballs hit Ryoji, directly making him fall to the ground. The dragon noticed that Ryoji can't move, so the dragon prepared for a spell to finish him off. While the dragon was preparing for the spell, Ryoji casted Meteor. The dragon stopped and looked up, preparing to counter the Meteor spell. Ryoji noticed that the dragon isn't paying attention to him, so he attacked from below, piercing through the dragon's jaws, instantly killing it. It was all according to Ryoji's plans. He made the dragon prepare for a big attack in order to exploit its openings. Ryoji leveled up from killing the ebony dragon, and he counted all the levels he received. He was able to level up 12 times. But as he looked at his palm, the level indicators still shows level 1. Then the loot of the ebony dragon appeared. The corpse itself was huge, and the loots were plenty. He thought that if he leaves this in here for 24 hours, the dungeon will just absorb the loots back. He suddenly remembered that he was looking for a certain item. It was the dungeon core. Ryoji was looking for the dungeon core because just by possessing the dungeon core, you will be able to move freely inside this dungeon. It is a very useful item for gathering certain materials and leveling up. The dungeon core from the Demon King in the other world wasn't working in this dungeon, so he was thankful that he was able to have this dungeon core since it will help him become more efficient. He quickly realized that he would also have to farm the other dungeon cores from the other dungeons, which is extremely tedious, and this made him annoyed. So, he focused on the problem he had now, which was the dragon's loots. He figured that it's too many, so he opted to just take as much as he can. He tried to store as much as he can, but to his surprise, his item box skill was able to take everything. He remembered that he never reached the maximum capacity of his item box. But now that he confirmed his strength then, he can proceed with his plan, making a peaceful world so he can watch anime forever. He went back home and slept, thinking that he should do this before Kayoko becomes an adventurer. In the morning, while Ryoji was walking to school, Kayoko approached him. They both said good morning to each other. Then, she said that the number of dungeons in Japan exceeded 100, but Ryoji was more surprised with Kayoko's hairstyle. She said that Kei recommended her hairstyle because it makes her cuter. Kayoko then said that there are some reports that monsters were breaking out of the dungeon, and the SDF had to intervene and defeat the monsters. There were a few casualties, including civilians. Ryoji replied back saying that it might not be true. Kayoko replied, saying that if monsters start to multiply outside the dungeon, then it would lead to the extinction of mankind. She added that even a highly advanced civilization was destroyed by the sudden appearance of dungeons and monsters. Ryoji asked where she got the information. She replied back saying that it was from Mumu Monthly, so Ryoji thought that it must be true. Few minutes later, Kei showed up and Kayoko went towards him. They greeted each other. While Ryoji thought that Ito Kei is a level 1 hunter. They flirted with each other as they both walked to school together. Kayoko said goodbye to Ryoji, while Ryoji was left wondering that there is a strange sensation in his chest. Ryoji thought what was the feeling in his chest was. He thought if he was in love with Kayoko, and to make sure of it, he looked at them closely. He can't quite explain his feeling at first. But he felt like he was a father, and his daughter brought his boyfriend. Then a sudden realization flashed on his head. It was because he considers Kayoko a family. Relief washed over him as he understood why he had that strange feeling. A few hours later, his classmate Yamada asked him if he saw the news. There was another victim of the fake dungeon information guide. Luckily, the victim made it out alive and was able to file a complaint, but the same can't be said to the other people. Ryoji asked, how do people fall for the fake information? Yamada replied that it's strange, but people who say that they're fine are more likely to fall for the scams. Yamada added that Ito and Kayoko meet those characteristics. They're researching the dungeons through strategy videos. Then he added that they raised a death flag. This bothered Ryoji. He told Yamada that he is going to the toilet. Yamada replied that it's all right and he'll let the teacher know. After he entered a toilet stall, Ryoji tried to understand the situation. He watched those videos out of curiosity, but it was all false information, so he tried to understand why would people spread information. He decided that he can't let this thing go anymore. He summoned his item box and another Ryoji started to come out of it. From the face down to his clothes, it was a perfect copy. It was a substitute puppet. It's an item that can take your place when fighting an enemy. It resembles like him, so the enemy can't figure out that they're attacking a clone. It is a consumable item that only lasts for a single day. He hasn't used it in a while, but luckily, he made one yesterday. Ryoji is planning on letting the substitute attend the classes for him. He gave the substitute the instructions and told that he would come back before the school ends and that the substitute should do its best. After that, he teleported away. He went back to his house and opened his desktop. He paid for plane ticket reservation, and right before he left, he prayed in front of his parents. He said that he will use the money they left other than his living expenses. He then checked if he left anything, then he teleports again. He arrived at the Haneda Airport's bathroom stall. He canceled his invisibility, then he walked out. Ryoji is excited because it's his first time flying. He thought that he should have used the money his uncles gave him, since he isn't really on the side of justice. He arrived at his seat and waited for the plane to take off. While the plane was in the sky, he was amazed that people can fly without magic. A few hours later, he arrived at his destination. Ryoji traveled to a spot near the dungeon just to be able to teleport again, since he can only teleport to a place he has been before. The place was crowded, so he sneaked past the line using his invisibility. He traveled down the dungeon, and he saw it firsthand. There were people that believe on the false information that was posted online. He went into a secluded spot and made sure that there was no one around. After that, he casted detection, and he realized that this dungeon is also one of the dungeons he explored in the other world. He summoned a drone from the item box. It is equipped with a high-performance digital camera. He can't use electricity inside the dungeon, so he modified the drone to be able to run on magical power. He was able to do it since Princess Daenerys taught him magic crafting as part of his hero training while he was in the other world. He thought about mass-producing the drones, but the materials used are rare, so he only made 4 at the moment. He casted invisibility on the drone since it would be bad if the others were to see it. And since he was level 1400, he doesn't need to worry about the MP consumption of the invisibility. After he changed his clothes, he prepared to record, but he forgot about something. Back at the school, Yamada thought that there was something odd with Ryoji. He thought that Ryoji seemed to be more alert than the usual. Ryoji's clone replied that he was a substitute puppet created using magic and magic crafting. Thankfully, Yamada didn't believe him. Back in the Katsurahama dungeon, Ryoji found the thing he was looking for. It was a helmet that looks like it's from Kamen Rider. He wore the helmet and prepared to record, but as soon as he talked, he started stumbling over his own words. He tried doing it again, but he can't hide his nervousness while he talked. And the more he tries his best to hide his nervousness, the more he fails. After an hour, he finally managed to make an intro after doing several takes. The groups that noticed him started to pretend not to notice what he is doing. Ryoji proceeded recording the video, walking stiffly around the area. He started giving guidelines with the hunting spot near the entrance, but there was already 3 parties, and it's hard to find a slime. He said that if there's too many adventurers, the earning rate will decrease, but they should count on others if they need help. He added that there's no way to reverse death, so they should hunt with safety on top of their mind. Ryoji was already getting used to the feeling of being recorded and speaking on the camera. He proceeded with the recording and pointed out a hunting spot that he recommends. He reminded that there's 2 slimes on the way, so they should be careful. He showed the spawn locations of the treasure chest and noted that they are very easy to overlook. He opened the treasure chest, but he was unlucky because there's only a potion inside. He explained that scouters are extremely rare and can usually be found in purple treasure chest. Treasure chest respawns after 24 hours, so they should look forward to the next one. He then explained about the traps on the floor, saying that it is noticeable if they pay attention on the color. He accidentally stepped on the trap, which shot an arrow and bonked his head. He was embarrassed, but thankfully he is wearing a helmet, so he just made an excuse that he activated the trap on purpose. After explaining the first floor, he proceeded to the stair that leads to the second floor. He explained that second floor has goblins which are on another level compared to the slimes, and that people without adventurer traits will most likely die, so they should avoid the area entirely. While he was walking down explaining, he slipped, which caused him to fall down, and the drone captured all of it. He pretended that he fell on purpose to avoid his embarrassment. Suddenly, a woman being chased by goblins appeared running towards him. He casted Fireball to the two goblins, instantly killing the goblins. Then he asked the woman if she is okay. The woman replied saying her thanks and that her friend was abducted by the goblins. Ryoji promised to save his friend and used detection to quickly locate where her friend was. The woman was surprised on how quickly Ryoji moved and reacted. He announced that he was there to save them, and an old man replied, shouting for help. Ryoji was surprised that the woman's friend was an old man. He casted Fireball, but his thoughts were muddled seeing the couple in the dungeon. He thought that what if Kyoko and Ito were to dungeon dive together? His thoughts amplified the power of the Fireball. The power output was so high that it destroyed multiple dungeon walls. It's been a decade since he last used too much magical power. Luckily, there wasn't any victim. The old man thanked him, but he also asked about the absurd magic he just witnessed. Ryoji said that it was just a high-output fireball, but it almost became a flame cannon. Then the old man criticized him, saying that he is thankful, but wasn't that a bit too much? The old man continued to nag on Ryoji, saying that what if the dungeon collapses? Ryoji explained that the dungeon has auto-repair system, so it will be fixed tomorrow. The woman finally caught up to them. Ryoji gave them an advice that they aren't a high level enough, so they should level up by beating the slimes on the first floor first. But the old man got angry, saying that he just let his guard down, and he shouldn't lecture them. The couple both walked away angrily, and Ryoji thought that if they continued, he might have to protect them again. He then thought that the map was broken because of his fireball, so he can't continue to record. So he decided to get out of there, and as for the couple, Ryoji thought that he already gave them an advice that they ignored, so they are responsible for their own actions. Ryoji remembered that Daenerys once told him that he himself is responsible for what happens inside the dungeon. Listening to someone else's instruction would be stupid, and even Daenerys' instructions aren't absolute, so doesn't need to follow them if he thinks they're wrong. Ryoji sneaked back outside the dungeon. After he found a secluded area, he teleported back home again. He laid in bed, thinking that there's still time until the school starts, so he figured that he will conquer the second floor of Katsurahama Dungeon tomorrow and that he should record another dungeon. He thought that he can probably record 1 dungeon a day and 2 on the weekends. That would equate to 40 a month, and he could probably record all of the first and second floor dungeons in 3 months. That means filming would be finished before his graduation. The problem would be the editing. He thought about cutting some parts, connecting the remaining ones, and adding subtitles. He wanted to make it eye-catching, so he watched some videos for inspiration. The next day at lunchtime, Yamada asked him what he brought for lunch. Ryoji answered that he didn't bring anything, and that wasn't really hungry. Yamada gave him half his lunch to Ryoji and invited him to eat together. Ryoji thanked him while calling him Glasses-kun. Yamada was surprised, so he asked if Ryoji forgot his name. Ryoji thanked him again, saying, Yamada's name. Ryoji said that he will never forget that he shared his lunch with him until the day he dies. Yamada thought that it was a bit of an exaggeration, saying that they're friend, or rather, comrades after all. Ryoji teared up, so he covered his eyes with the back of his palm. When Yamada asked what was wrong, he pretended that his eyelash was in his eye. Back in the Katsuharama dungeon, the woman was caught by goblins again. The old man tried to stop the goblins, but he was slapped right in the face. The goblins started to dive in and assault her, but they were frozen by magic. It was Ryoji. He advised the couple to evacuate in the first floor for now. They were glad that they were saved again. Ryoji freed both of them, and the woman thanked him. The couple hugged each other, since they narrowly escaped being assaulted by goblins. The old man thanked him for saving them the second time. He admitted that it was his fault since he ignored all the advice he gave earlier. Ryoji replied that he helped him on his own accord, so there's no need for thanks. Then he asked why are they exploring the dungeon despite being low level. The old man replied that he watched some videos saying that they can conquer second floor even at low levels, but it was a paid subscription. The woman added that the videos with "I'm not supposed to tell you" and "only advanced people know this" as title were all bullshit. Ryoji, with his worried expression, thinking that the fake videos are more damaging than he thought. And this marks the end of Chapter 5.
Like and subscribe, and click the bell icon so you can be notified for future updates. For other videos like this, click here. Thanks for watching.